Yes, and the addition that is linked to the wide receiver group, of course, is Andrell Anthony. So we've got three additions to talk about. Two that we did discuss last week as being huge possibilities. The one that we did not was the incoming wide receiver Andrell Anthony from Michigan, who didn't catch a ton of passes there with the Maize and Blue, but if you look back on his background, he did flash in some bigger games. If you go back to the Michigan State game of 2021, he had a breakout game and showed quite a bit there of his potential. And so he makes his way to Oklahoma.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he's got a decent amount of size, 6'1", 6'2" guy, 185, 190. And you mentioned, I think his probably his standout performance was in that Michigan State game, and specifically that that long touchdown pass reception that he got in that game. But yeah, I think it's obviously a position of need that we've talked about that even more so with Marvin Mims declaring for the draft last week. So you look at Oklahoma's receiving core, there the loss of Theo Weiss, the loss of Marvin Mims, and now they're going to continue to bolster this roster from a receiver perspective. I would certainly anticipate outside of him, Mark, there might be a couple more that Oklahoma's been in the kind of in the discussion with. There's a transfer wide receiver out of Bowling Green that Oklahoma was really in on. I think Oklahoma ended up passing on him. As the last I've heard, the 6'7" kid, one of the tallest receivers in the country this year. So, but Oklahoma ended up passing on him. There was there's a couple of other guys that. One that's already in the portal that it's looking maybe trending a little bit more in Oklahoma's direction, and this is interesting that it's Bryson Green from Oklahoma State, so could potentially be the second guy from from your rival school going over going across the territory line, so to speak, to go to Oklahoma. So he's a guy who was one of their leading receivers last year for Oklahoma State. And then there's another receiver from Texas Tech that could potentially follow Emmett Jones over to Oklahoma. He's not in the portal yet, but there's some indications that could potentially happen. So it's something. It's an area of need, along with I think defensive line is going to be something that they look at as well. Particularly at the defensive tackle position that they continue to look at in terms of possibilities. But yeah, coupled with some of the younger kids, Andrell Anthony and whoever else Oklahoma ends up offering and is able to get into Norman is is a group that they're looking to get a little bit more productivity across the board with. Right, I mean, you've got Marvin Mims and Jalil Farooq that were your major contributors this year for Oklahoma, but then you've got some other kids that have an opportunity. Drake Stoops is that he's always going to be kind of that possession receiver. He's not going to be a 1,000-yard guy, but he's a guy that's going to 500-600 yards. But I think the main thing through some young guys and through some of the recruiting classes and then transfer portal, we'll see how some of these guys end up developing from year one to year two. You got Nick Anderson, who didn't play a whole lot, played a little bit in the bowl game. You've got Jaden Gibson, big tall receiver that didn't see a ton of action, but I think there's going to be the expectation that some of those kids, Jaquazi Petaway, the 4-star wide receiver recruit, has an opportunity to be a little bit more of a deep threat for Oklahoma. So it'll be interesting to see how they continue to bolster that room with some of these potential transfers here in the portal.
Bryson Green, in particular, had one catch against Oklahoma this past season for 11 yards. Had his biggest days against Texas Tech. 5 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Had a huge day against Texas as well. 5 catches, 133 yards. That was a game Texas Tech trailed by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. I'm sorry, Oklahoma State, Texas. Hey, it's the same script. It's Texas. Actually, that's also with Oklahoma State, a game that Oklahoma State trailed by 2 touchdowns against Texas and came back and won that one against the Longhorns. He also had a 105-yard day against Kansas with 9 receptions for the Cowboys. So 3 100-yard reception days, and all in Big 12 play for Bryson Green.